I never planned to become a murderer. I never imagined I'd bury my own sister. But when love turns to betrayal and betrayal turns to rage, what's left is a woman with nothing to lose. This is the story of how I killed my husband's side chick, only to discover she was my own blood. My name is Alice Miller. 29, I thought I had it all, a successful catering business, a loving husband, and a beautiful home in Abuja. Our house, nestled in a quiet tree-lined street in the upscale Jobby area, was my sanctuary. It had a lush garden I tended to every weekend, and a spacious kitchen where the aroma of spices and simmering sauces was a constant, comforting presence. My business, Alice's Delights, was thriving, catering to the city's elite and the numerous foreign embassies. I poured my heart into every dish, every event, building a reputation for excellence. Life felt full, vibrant, and utterly secure. Ben, my husband, was the perfect partner in this idyllic life. He was charming, always impeccably dressed, and had this calm confidence that drew people in. He worked in oil and gas, a high-flying job that often took him on international trips, but he always made time for us. Or so I believed. He'd come home from a long day, and his smile alone could melt away any stress I felt. Friends and family called us the power couple. We were the pair everyone looked up to, the picture of modern success and enduring love. Our Instagram page was filled with carefully curated moments, romantic dinners, vacations to exotic locales, Ben's arm always around my waist, his eyes always looking at me with what I thought was adoration. But behind those perfect smiles, something darker was brewing. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. The late-night calls became a recurring nuisance. Ben would step outside onto our balcony, his voice a hushed murmur against the night air. When I'd inquire, he'd dismiss it with a wave of his hand. Just work, darling, a client from out of town, or an urgent issue in Port Harcourt. I tried to shrug them off, telling myself his job was demanding. But a knot of unease began to form in my stomach. Then came the missed anniversaries. Our third wedding anniversary, a date we had always celebrated with a romantic getaway, passed with a perfunctory dinner at a fancy restaurant. He spent half the time glancing at his phone, his attention elsewhere. My 29th birthday last year was met with a hastily bought bracelet and an excuse about an urgent business trip to Ghana that couldn't be postponed. The excuses were becoming more frequent, more elaborate, and less convincing. Each missed moment was a tiny chisel chipping away at my trust. The final crack in our carefully constructed reality appeared in the form of a scent. A delicate floral perfume that lingered faintly on his shirts after he'd been out, in the passenger seat of our car, even on his pillow. It was a fragrance I didn't own, a subtle but undeniable sign. It was a phantom presence, a silent intruder in our home, whispering of secrets and stolen moments. Clung to him like a second skin, a constant reminder of someone else. I confronted him once, my voice trembling more than I intended. I laid out the evidence, the late calls, the missed dates, the perfume. He looked at me, his eyes wide and seemingly innocent, his brow furrowed with what appeared to be genuine concern. "Alice, my love, are you all right?" he'd asked, his voice laced with a patronizing tenderness that made my skin crawl. "You've been so stressed with the business. These are all just coincidences. You're being insecure, paranoid, emotional." He was gaslighting me, slowly eroding my confidence, making me question my own sanity. He made me feel like I was imagining things, that my feelings were irrational. I desperately wanted to believe him, to cling to the image of the loving husband I thought I had. I tried to let it go, to bury my doubts. But a woman always knows when another woman is in her home, in her life. The scent was a constant, mocking presence. The feeling gnawed at me, a persistent unease that refused to be silenced. Kept me awake at night, my mind replaying every suspicious glance, every hurried phone call. One Saturday night, the gnawing became unbearable. Ben mumbled something about a late meeting and kissed me perfunctorily on the forehead before heading out. An hour later, a seed of suspicion blossomed into a full-blown conviction. I had to know. I had to see for myself. I slipped into my car, the engine purring to life with a sense of shared conspiracy. I followed his sleek black Mercedes, keeping a safe distance, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. He drove past the familiar landmarks of Abuja, heading towards Was 2, a district known for its upscale serviced apartments and hidden nightlife. He parked in front of a discreet-looking building with tinted windows and disappeared inside. I waited. The minutes stretched into an eternity, each tick of the car clock amplifying my anxiety. The night air grew cooler, and the streetlights cast long, distorted shadows on the road. I watched people come and go, my mind a blank slate except for the burning need to see who he was with. 1 hour passed. Then 2. Just as despair began to set in, the entrance door opened. A woman emerged. She was slender, with a radiant light-skinned complexion that seemed to glow even in the dim streetlights. Long, intricately styled braids cascaded down her back. And then she turned and I saw her in profile. The curve of her cheek, the delicate slope of her nose, a flicker of something familiar stirred within me, a distant memory trying to break through the fog of my anxiety. But it was the way she kissed him goodbye that sent a shard of ice through my veins. It wasn't a casual peck, a fleeting gesture. It was lingering, intimate, personal. Their bodies pressed together for a moment longer than necessary, a silent language passing between them that spoke volumes of a shared intimacy, a history I was not a part of. My husband's arm was wrapped around her waist, pulling her close. It was a scene ripped from a nightmare. I couldn't see her face clearly enough to place her, but I had seen enough to shatter the remnants of my carefully constructed reality. My perfect life, my perfect marriage, it was all a lie. Revenge wasn't the immediate emotion that surged through me. It was a raw, aching need for answers. Who was this woman? What hold did she have on my husband? Why her? Driven by a desperate need for confrontation, I concocted a plan. Using a burner phone I kept for business emergencies and a fake social media profile, I crafted a message to the woman. I found her account quickly. Ben had clearly left clues. I introduced myself as Mark, a wealthy admirer who had seen her at a recent high-profile event. I complimented her style and suggested meeting for drinks at a sophisticated hotel bar in Maitama, a neutral territory chosen for its anonymity. I specifically requested she come alone, citing a private matter I wished to discuss. To my surprise, she readily agreed, probably enticed by the idea of a rich new suitor. The following Thursday, I found myself perched in a dimly lit corner of the Onyx Lounge, the plush velvet of the banquette a stark contrast to the churning anxiety in my stomach. I had chosen a spot that offered a clear view of the entrance, shrouded in shadow, a silent observer in my own twisted drama. Every minute felt like an hour. My palms were sweaty and my heart hammered against my ribs. What would I say? How would I react? I had no script, only a burning desire for truth. And then she walked in. My breath hitched. The glass of water in my hand trembled precariously, nearly spilling. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. It was Sarah, my younger sister. The girl I had shared a childhood with, giggled with over secret crushes, argued with over stolen clothes, and confided in during tearful teenage nights. The little sister I had once protected. We hadn't seen each other in years. A bitter family fallout, fueled by youthful misunderstandings and stubborn pride, had led to her cutting off all contact. She had vanished from our lives after university, leaving a void and a lingering ache of unanswered questions. Our parents had tried to reach her, but she had ghosted everyone. And now here she was, standing just a few feet away, radiating an aura of confidence and sophistication I had never seen in her. She wore a sleek, figure-hugging black dress that screamed designer, her feet adorned with expensive stilettos that clicked softly on the marble floor. Her hair, those long braids, was perfectly styled. And then I noticed it, the faint, familiar floral scent that had haunted my nights, the perfume that had driven me to this point. My husband's perfume clung to her, an undeniable, sickening proof. She scanned the dimly lit bar, her eyes searching. She didn't recognize me, not in the shadows, not with the carefully neutral expression I had plastered on my face. She looked bored, then annoyed, probably wondering where this mark was. I stood up, my legs feeling like lead. I took a step forward, then another, emerging from the shadows. Clinking of ice in nearby glasses seemed deafening in the sudden stillness that had descended around me. My vision narrowed, focusing only on her. "Alice!" she gasped, her eyes widening in disbelief as recognition finally dawned. Her face drained of color, replaced by a mixture of shock, confusion, and then, unmistakably, fear. The carefully constructed facade of her composure crumbled. She took a step back, as if preparing to flee. I didn't speak. I couldn't. Carefully rehearsed questions, the accusations, the desperate pleas for explanation, they all evaporated in the face of this devastating revelation. The years of unspoken hurt over her disappearance, the fresh wound of betrayal by the two people I should have been able to trust the most, coalesced into a single overwhelming wave of pure, blinding rage. It wasn't just Ben's betrayal, it was Sarah's. My own sister. With my husband. It was a cruelty beyond anything I could have imagined. It happened in a blur, a chaotic explosion of raw emotion. My hand shot out, fueled by an uncontrollable fury, and connected with her cheek with a sharp, resounding slap that echoed in the sudden stillness of the bar. Sarah stumbled back, her eyes wide with hurt and confusion. A guttural sound, more animal than human, escaped my lips. I lunged forward, grabbing her arm and shoved her with all my might. She lost her balance, her body twisting awkwardly as she fell. There was a sickening thud as her head connected with the sharp, unyielding edge of the marble bar top. Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence that seemed to swallow the ambient sounds of the city, the soft jazz music from the speakers, the distant hum of traffic. For a moment, time stopped. Then, a crimson bloom spread rapidly beneath her head, staining the pristine white marble. So much blood. An impossible amount of blood. Spread like a dark, expanding stain, reflecting the dim lights of the bar. I didn't mean to kill her. The intention had been confrontation, a desperate cry for answers, maybe even a physical expression of my pain. But in that moment of blind rage, the line had been crossed, irrevocably. My sister, my rival, lay still and lifeless at my feet. Her eyes, once so full of life, were now vacant, staring up at the elegant ceiling. I didn't call anyone. Didn't scream. Didn't even cry. I just stood there, then slowly sank onto the plush velvet banquette, staring at the horrifying tableau, a strange sense of detachment washing over me. My mind felt numb, disconnected from my body. The world outside the bar continued its relentless rhythm, oblivious to the tragedy that had just unfolded within its walls. The manager, a young man who had been out back, finally appeared, saw the scene, and let out a horrified cry. The sirens wailed in the distance, growing steadily louder. They found me there, hours later, still in a state of shock, the reality of my actions slowly seeping into my consciousness. Police, the questions, the flashing lights, it all felt like a dream. The aftermath was a whirlwind of flashing lights, frantic police interviews, and the cold, sterile confines of a holding cell. Ben, the architect of this devastating tragedy, played the part of the grieving, shocked husband with chilling precision. He arrived at the police station, looking distraught, his voice trembling as he spoke to the officers. He denied everything, claimed he had no idea that Sarah was my sister. "I met her through work, officers," he'd said, his voice laced with feigned sorrow. "I had no idea of her family connections. This is a complete shock to me." It was a blatant lie, of course, considering the numerous family photographs that adorned our home, photographs he had looked at countless times, pictures of me and Sarah as kids growing up. He even knew about our family fallout, though I hadn't given him details. But he was convincing, a master manipulator even in the face of death. Trial was a blur of legal jargon and tearful testimonies. My parents, heartbroken and bewildered, spoke of a fractured family. Other estranged relatives, hearing the news, came forward, their faces etched with grief and confusion. Prosecution painted me as a jealous and vengeful wife, capable of cold-blooded murder. My attempts to explain the depth of the betrayal, The agonizing realization that my husband had not only cheated on me but had done so with my own sister seemed to fall on deaf ears. The judge, the jury, they saw only the fatal blow, the blood, the undeniable result. My lawyer tried to argue temporary insanity, the heat of the moment, the shock, but the evidence was against me. The verdict came swiftly. Guilty of manslaughter. Not murder, but still a crime that would take years of my life. Now I sit within the stark, unforgiving walls of Silesia prison, the days bleeding into one another with monotonous regularity. The sounds of the prison, the clanging of gates, the chatter of other inmates, the distant shouts are my constant companions. My business, Alice's Delights, is long gone, dissolved in the wake of the scandal. My beautiful home likely sold. Ben has moved on as predicted. I hear through the grapevine whispers carried by infrequent visitors and the hushed conversations of other inmates that he has remarried. Another young, beautiful woman graces his social media feed, their life seemingly as picture-perfect as ours once was. He is living lavishly, untouched by the devastation he helped orchestrate, living a life of freedom while I rot in this cage. And me? I am Alice Miller, the woman who never planned to become a murderer, the woman who buried her own sister. I tell my story not to elicit pity, not to seek forgiveness for the unforgivable act I committed. I tell it so that you, the listener, might understand the devastating consequences that unfold when love curdles into poison, and when the bonds of blood become the sharpest instruments of betrayal. This is the twisted tale of how I killed my husband's side chick, only to discover she shared the very blood that now stains my hands. Remember my name, remember my story, and understand the dark corners where the human heart can lead us when pushed beyond its breaking point. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more twisted love stories.